Well, let me tell you how I ended up at the starting line of Boston 2013. A little bit of my history or background. I was involved in sports and athletics all throughout high school and college, and got into marathon running in 1996 when a friend asked me to join her, raise some money for team and training, and we went over to Hawaii and ran the Hawaii Marathon in 1996. So that was my introduction to marathons. I've always enjoyed running and just kind of dabbled back and forth with the shorter runs. Did several marathons following that one in 1996, and soon realized that I enjoyed the discipline and the training that was part of a marathon. You don't wake up one morning and decide that that's what you're going to do the next morning or even the next week. It's a training plan that typically involves 3, maybe 4 months of commitment time. And so after several marathons, I started looking at my times and I thought, well, you know, I'm close to qualifying for Boston, but I'm not there yet. So I had to work pretty hard. Qualifying wasn't easy. And Boston is set up that based on your gender and your age, you have a certain time that you have to meet in order to be able to run that race. And so back in 2009, I finally qualified and was able to go and participate in the marathon. And it was a wonderful experience. Boston attracts about 26,000 runners. And as you know, there's some very elite runners that make it there. So just back up to say that Boston, unlike any other marathon that I've run, the crowd support there is phenomenal. I think they estimate that there's about 500,000 spectators that line the 26 miles, and I can attest that there are just people everywhere. And police presence is very evident as well. You see motorcades of the police motorcycles surrounding the athletes, both at the starting line and throughout. You know, there's police presence keeping the crowds back, barricades. So in 2009, after I ran that race, it quickly became a favorite and one I wanted to try to get back to each year. And so we'll fast forward now to Boston 2013. Troy and I made the trip ourselves that year. Previous years we had taken Brayton, but this year we had opted to keep the children home with family, and in hindsight that was a decision that was a good one and one that we were very thankful for. And having been to Boston several times before, I had the routine down. You know, you wake up early, you walk a half mile, you stand in line with about 26,000 other people waiting to board a bus that drives you 45 minutes to the starting line. And it was at that point that I usually say, so long to Troy, and he becomes a spectator. So I'll let him just give you a blurb of what his normal routine is like and what he chose to do that day.
Well, yes, this was our 4th time. We kind of had the system down, and usually I would go back to where we were staying, and then I'd eat breakfast and hop on the train or the rail, because that's how you get around up there, both under the city and then, of course, out further above ground. But it's Patriot Day in New England, so that means everybody is off. So nobody's working. However, there are so many people because you're either coming in for the Red Sox game, they play at 11 that morning, or you're trying to go out to somewhere on the course to see the race. So it's very difficult and cumbersome to get around, especially in the beginning of the day. So I decided to fulfill a bucket list item, and I said to her on the way up, "You mind if I go to Fenway for the Red Sox game?" Because I've seen a lot of marathons, and it's not the greatest spectator sport, and I've never been to Fenway. I didn't have anybody hold me back, so that's what I did. I went over to the Fenway, it was Jackie Robinson Day, so everybody had number 42 and no names in the back of their jerseys, and they were playing the Rays, so I didn't know a lot of the players. And stayed there till about the 8th inning because they track the runners via text. They text you and get to certain points. So I was following her that way. Plus, I had a GPS on her. We had a little GPS to track. Probably our daughter would someday. We're using it for the athletic things that we do then. So I knew exactly where she was, and I left in about the 8th inning to get her to the finish line where we had established a meeting spot.
So, once the buses take you to the starting line, they call it Athletes Village, and it is just a monstrous, basically football field tents where you kind of hang out, and because you can't start 26,000 people all at one time, they have different waves. So based on your time, they start the fastest runners first, actually the elite first, and you never get to see them because they're sequestered and, you know, everybody kind of moves to the side. You don't really get to interact. So they start first, then there's another wave, 20 minutes later there's another wave. So it goes in succession like that. So you kind of know what time your wave's going off, and then you walk about another half mile to the starting line to get ready for the spot, or ready for the start. You also wear a timing chip in your shoe, just for those of you who are not familiar with marathons. So, you know, the timing chip will accurately track your time. So my goal, I work hard to get to Boston, so when I finally do run Boston, I dial it back a bit and I just enjoy it. And so my goal that morning was just to finish in 4 hours. I usually have to run about a 3:45 to get there, and so I enjoy running a little slower once I'm there. In any event, around mile 23, and you know, Boston started just like any other one, and I'll fast forward to mile 23. I just didn't have it in me that day. I typically don't walk. I usually run marathons, and I just didn't have it in me. So around mile 23, I started walking. I probably walked 2 to 3 minutes, and I could have walked a lot longer, but there was something, a tug, call it what you will, that said you really should run. So I started running again. But I went back and forth in my mind. I really was much more comfortable walking. Why should I run? I'm not going to make more than 4 hours right now anyway. What's the point? But I started running again. And I ran through the finish line in 4 hours and 4 minutes and 34 seconds. I was excited to be done. And kind of the normal things that happen after you cross the finish line, you have somebody put a kind of like a warming foil across you. So that was wrapped around me, and I stood in a little bit of a line for somebody to put tape across. Stood in a little bit of a line to get a water bottle, and then walked a little further. Somebody put something around my neck, and you're milling with people. I remember talking to the guy next to me, just making idle runner chit-chat at the end. How are your legs? How'd you feel? And it was at that point that I'm guessing it was about 75 yards past the finish line that I had meandered, and the explosion happened, and it sounded like a cannon. And we all just stopped and turned around, literally just stopped and turned around and looked back and saw just a huge cloud of, you know, white smoke. And nothing really registered to all of us other than, well, it seems kind of strange if there was some celebration. Why would they do it now, and why all that smoke? So we stood there just kind of frozen and wondering what was going on, and we hadn't even turned around to start walking when the second explosion happened. And it was at that point that that we knew something wasn't right. You know, we didn't know what, but it just didn't feel right. You could see it in people's eyes, and as we not knowing what to do other than continuing to move forward, as we're walking and people questioning what's going on. You know, the security started coming the opposite way, and they were saying, please continue to move forward, don't look back, continue on, don't turn around, take pictures. And the atmosphere just became very different. I remember somebody saying at that point what they thought it was, that this is not good. What if we're walking into something? I hadn't even gone in that, thinking in that mode. But as we were walking and still unsure of really what was happening, there were, and as you can imagine, the spectators are still sequestered, you know, and this is all just athletes going down this track. They don't allow any spectators after you cross the finish line. There's a family meeting area that's kind of 2 streets over, but in order to get the athletes through to get what they need, we have to pick up our bags. It's very, very organized. And as we're walking down, there was a camera crew, and the guy I was walking with said to the camera guy, "Can you see what's going on up there?" And he said, "No, but my sister company is, and they just radioed us, and it doesn't look good. People are hurt." But didn't elaborate in details. But it was in that. Then things became a little bit more chaotic with the influx of personnel trying to get to the other side, us trying to get out. People, I think, realizing and reacting. You saw people huddled, you saw people throwing up, out of shock, out of fatigue, who knows. And the thing that was going through my mind at that time, I just want to get to Troy. I just want to find it. So we kept moving forward, and they were diverting us, telling us to go different ways because of trying to get medical and other responders in. And so then there was the influx of the spectators and the athletes, and then it just became a little bit chaotic trying to get to where I knew that he was, and I was hoping that he was still there. And it just took a lot longer, but we found each other. Typically that process takes maybe 15, 20 minutes maybe. Felt like it took twice as long easily. But I'll let him share kind of what he felt 2 streets over, and then tie it up about what kind of where we process, how we process this a little bit at home, and where we've gone from here.
So I left the game. I said I was going to the finish line, but really you don't go there unless you put yourself there early in the day, because there's just way too many people. So they have a family meeting area. It's a couple of blocks long, and they have on the street lights A, B, you know, going down through the street, and then you're supposed to meet under your sign, you know, last name. So rather than go do P, we decided to meet at A, because again, we've been there before. A's on the end, it's closer to where we're going. So we had that worked out, and I was waiting there. And it's like being at a football game or a concert. I mean, there's just so much noise. I mean, just people talking, and you know, you're shoulder to shoulder. And all of a sudden, there was this boom. I mean, we live in Annville, so we hear that from the gap, and that's what it sounded like, that low, vibrating boom. It wasn't a kaboom, you know, it was a boom. And everything just went from that level of noise to like it is right now. It was just still. Thousands of people, tens of thousands of people, no words. And I immediately looked in the air because, hey, for me, 9/11 is a defining moment, you know, in my lifetime. Somebody just flew into a building, and I didn't see anyone. I didn't see any smoke. So I'm like a block from the line, so there's, you know, buildings, tall buildings in the way. I can't see what's happening over there. I know generally where it's coming from. Then the next one happens. And the guy next to me says, "Is that thunder?" And I said, "Buddy, that is not thunder." "It did good, whatever it is. All of a sudden, no cell signal. Nobody had any cell signal. Everybody's trying to make a call. The only thing that pierced the silence was there was a cop with a whistle, started blowing his whistle and trying to push his way through the crowd. And I was like, man, this is not good. We got to get out of here now. We got to find each other. And her GPS stopped working because you need satellite and cell phone for that thing to work. So now I don't know where she's at, even though I saw her across the finish line, and I knew it was going to take 15 minutes to find each other. And as time went on, and she wasn't showing up, and you'd have to be from here to the food away to actually recognize each other. It's just that many faces. And I'm like, let's go, we gotta go, And as soon as I saw her, I could tell she was upset. And all she said was, people are hurt. And I said, yeah, let's go, and we'll get this figured out. But we started hightailing it back to our car and where we were staying.
So, yeah, the details, probably not that important, but reflecting back, I crossed at 4:04, first bomb went off, or first explosion went off at 4:09. Had I continued to walk, it makes you think. I guess it wasn't my time, and I'm not going to make more of it than what it is, but it certainly had some processing to do. Very thankful to come home to the children, and to be safe. That is survivor's guilt, feeling guilty that I walked away without anything, other than my memories, and why asking a lot of questions. But in any event, it's part of my life now, and part of what has defined me. I want to get back there next year. I want to run again and have a different ending. But if you have any questions, I'd be happy to take them. If there's any things that you want to ask.
You mentioned that you want to get back there next year. Are you doing anything between now and then, or is that like the focus right now for you?
Well, that is the focus. I enjoy ultra marathons, and I completed a 50-mile run last Saturday. So I continue to have things to do and train for.
Any thoughts or nerves at all running that because of the ending in Boston? That was the first one, right?
Oh no, not at all. The ultra stuff is done in the woods and mountains, and nobody cares. Oh yes, I have run a marathon since then. Not a big, well-known one, but yeah.
How long does it take to do
The ultra, 50 miles takes me about 11 hours. So, and I did do a 100-mile run. That took about 30 hours. So, anyway, so that's my new love, is real long running. Time away from him.